chaos here in the U.S. economy as well, at least around it. Potential for yet another shutdown over government funding. If there's not a deal by Friday night, we're looking at a partial shutdown that could have major implications for everything from military paychecks to air travel.
I have just been handed something you absolutely need to see. What just happened is staggering. A federal judge looked directly at FBI Director Kash Patel in open court and told him in plain terms, produce the documents right now or federal marshals will arrest you on the spot today. No negotiation, no wiggle room, no more stalling. And the man who runs the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country visibly fell apart right there in the courtroom. The hearing that led to this extraordinary warning from the judge centered on documents that Patel has been holding back for months, despite having a clear and undeniable legal obligation to hand them over. We are not talking about minor paperwork here.
FBI Director Kash Patel was on Capitol Hill again today, testifying this time before the House Judiciary Committee. 5 hours. Any fireworks?
Some fireworks. Look, it was a fairly similar appearance to yesterday. It went a little bit longer, 5 hours. He sat there before the House Judiciary Committee answering members' questions, pretty much every single member of that committee asking him various questions, a number of small kind of lower stakes fights over motions to try and issue additional subpoenas at the end of that hearing. It just wrapped up a short time ago. But he did spar specifically with several Democratic members, mostly on the Epstein files, something where Democrats and some Republicans have been looking to release every single file. At this point, the Trump administration saying they're releasing what they're able to release, but not going much further than that.
We are talking about Epstein-related records buried inside FBI investigative files. We are talking about internal FBI memos and communications that could reveal exactly what the Bureau knew about certain powerful and well-connected individuals and their ties to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal operation. We are talking about documents connected to investigations involving Donald Trump himself. Investigations that Patel publicly claimed the FBI was actively and lawfully pursuing, but that critics alleged were being quietly buried or steered away from the former president behind the scenes.
It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times.
It's not. It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number, but it's not that.
Do you think it might be your job to know the number?
My job is to provide for the safety and security of this country. My job is not to engage in political innuendo so you can go out to the sticks and get your 20-second hit in your fundraising article.
But
keep going, reclaiming your time, because the people of California are being underserved by your representation.
The court issued formal subpoenas demanding these materials be turned over. The court ordered compliance, and month after month, Patel came back with new reasons to refuse, new legal privileges to assert, new national security concerns to raise, new procedural objections to file. The strategy was completely transparent to everyone who was paying attention. Delay long enough, and maybe the window for accountability would simply close on its own. Judge Richard Berman decided that the moment for accountability had arrived and that he was going to be the one to deliver it. In person, face to face.
To feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, you are not alone. We are once again on the brink of another partial government shutdown. Now, over the weekend, House Republicans released a stopgap plan to kind of keep things running through the end of September 30th. It is 99 pages, but we went through it so you don't have to. Here is what it does. It increases defense spending by about $6 billion while decreasing domestic spending by about $13 billion. It also increases immigration and customs enforcement money and also adds funding.
What makes this confrontation so extraordinary is not just what the judge said, but who he was saying it to. Kash Patel is not some low-level government employee who can be threatened in a courtroom without it meaning something significant. He is the director of the FBI appointed to lead the most powerful and prestigious law enforcement agency in the world, entrusted with upholding the Constitution and enforcing the laws of the United States. When the FBI director walks into a room, he carries with him the full weight and authority of the federal government. But on this particular day, in this particular courtroom, everything was flipped upside down. It was the judge who held the power, and it was the FBI director who was sitting there facing real consequences for breaking the very laws he had taken a solemn oath to enforce.
FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group.
The irony of this moment could not have been thicker. The man whose job is to investigate obstruction of justice was himself being accused of obstructing justice. The man who oversees the arrest of federal fugitives was being threatened with arrest himself. The man who controls the FBI's massive investigative machine was being told that his own conduct had become the subject of a judicial sanction. The situation was almost too on the nose to believe, and yet there it was, playing out in open court. The judge's questions throughout the hearing were direct and relentless. He asked Patel specifically about documents that had been subpoenaed and demanded a straight answer for why they had not been handed over. Patel's responses danced carefully around the edges of every question, invoking legal arguments the judge had already ruled did not apply, raising concerns the court had already considered and thrown out. The pattern was immediately familiar to anyone who has watched Trump administration officials testify before Congress or show up in court. Acknowledge the question just enough to appear cooperative without actually answering it. Suggest complications that need further review, create the appearance of being cooperative while actually providing nothing of any substance. But a federal courtroom is not a congressional hearing room, and Judge Berman was not interested in playing that game any longer. He pressed harder. He demanded straight, direct answers. He made clear that evasion would be treated as contempt of court. And when Patel continued to evade, the judge decided to end the charade permanently. The exact language the judge used has been described by multiple people who were present in that courtroom, and it is the kind of thing that sends a chill through anyone who understands how the federal judiciary actually operates. He told Patel that no more delays would be tolerated, that no further excuses would be accepted, that every legal avenue available for postponing compliance had already been tried, considered, and rejected. He told Patel that the deadline for producing the documents was not negotiable and that the consequence for missing that deadline was immediate arrest, not another hearing, not another warning, not another opportunity to comply. Arrest. Federal marshals would be ordered to take the director of the FBI into physical custody and hold him there until he decided that following court orders was preferable to sitting inside a federal detention facility. The judge made absolutely clear that this was not a dramatic speech or an empty threat. This was the exercise of contempt power, real legal authority that federal judges possess and use when a defendant gives them no other option. And the documents at the center of this confrontation carry significance that goes far beyond the procedural question of whether Patel must comply with a subpoena. These are Epstein-related records that have been kept from public view despite intense pressure from Congress and the public to know what they contain. The FBI investigated Jeffrey Epstein for years. The Bureau compiled detailed files on his associates, his travel, his criminal operation, and the powerful and well-connected people who participated in or enabled his abuse of underage victims. Those files are now in the possession of the FBI that Kash Patel runs. The question that Congress and the courts have been pressing on is straightforward. What do those files say about Donald Trump and his relationship with Epstein? And the fact that Patel has fought this hard for this long to prevent those records from coming out strongly suggests that whatever is in them is something someone with a great deal of power does not want the public to ever see. Patel's role in this story goes beyond simply refusing to hand over documents. He reportedly made commitments at one point to Congress and to the public that the FBI would conduct a genuine investigation into Trump's connections to Epstein and would follow the evidence wherever it led. But according to whistleblowers and critics inside the Bureau, that investigation was quietly redirected away from Trump. Its scope was narrowed. Its resources were reduced. Its findings were buried. The documents the court is demanding would answer the central question definitively. They would show what specific instructions Patel gave to the FBI agents working on the investigation. They would reveal the communications that passed between Patel's office and Trump's legal and political teams. They would show whether the FBI director used the power of his position not to pursue justice, but to protect the man who gave him that position in the first place. Patel knows exactly what those documents contain, and his desperate, sustained effort to keep them hidden tells its own story about what investigators would find if those records ever saw the light of day. The contempt power that Judge Berman threatened to exercise is one of the most powerful tools available to a federal judge. Civil contempt allows a judge to order someone imprisoned specifically to force them to comply with a court order. The person held in contempt essentially holds the key to their own cell. Comply with the order and be released. Keep defying it and stay in custody. This is not punishment for something that already happened. This is direct, immediate pressure designed to produce future compliance. And it does not require a lengthy process. The judge does not need to assemble a jury or conduct a full trial. He simply makes 3 findings: that a valid court order exists, that the person has the ability to comply with it, and that they are choosing not to. At that point, the marshals can take the person into custody right there and then. Patel could walk into that courtroom as the director of the FBI and walk out in handcuffs as a federal detainee, all because he refused to hand over documents that the court has already ruled he has no legal right to keep. The criminal contempt dimension adds yet another layer of serious legal exposure on top of that. While civil contempt is a tool designed to force compliance, criminal contempt is designed to punish defiance. It can result in prison sentences and fines that do not simply disappear the moment the person decides to cooperate. A criminal contempt charge would make Patel a criminal defendant, facing prosecution by the very same Department of Justice he is supposed to help lead. The spectacle of the FBI director being criminally prosecuted by his own department would be completely unprecedented, and it would be devastating, not just to Patel personally, but to the institution he represents. The FBI depends entirely on public trust to function. Agents need witnesses to cooperate with them, juries to believe what they say in court, and ordinary citizens to respect their authority. When the director of the FBI is facing criminal charges for openly defying a federal judge, that trust collapses, and the institution's ability to do its job collapses right along with it. The personal impact on Patel was plainly visible to everyone in that courtroom. People who witnessed the hearing describe him as emotional, defensive, and visibly shaken by the judge's warnings, and by the dawning realization that the legal protections he assumed would shield him were proving completely worthless against a judge who was determined to hold the line. Patel has spent his entire career operating in environments where his connections and his position could shape how situations played out. As a congressional staffer, as a Trump administration official, and now as FBI director, he has grown accustomed to being treated with deference and accommodation. But a federal judge sitting in his own courtroom answers to no one except the Constitution and the appellate courts above him. Judge Berman was not impressed by Patel's title. He was not intimidated by his position. He saw a person standing before him who was defying court orders. And he responded the way judges respond to defiance, by steadily raising the consequences until compliance became the only rational choice left. The broader pattern this confrontation fits into is unmistakable, and it is deeply damaging to the Trump administration as a whole. We have watched the Attorney General get caught hiding documents from Department of Justice investigators. We have watched the FBI director get caught withholding documents from federal courts. We have watched pardon discussions that appear specifically designed to protect the people involved in these schemes from ever facing prosecution. We have watched congressional investigations peel back layer after layer of obstruction and deliberate concealment. And now we have a federal judge threatening to put the director of the FBI in jail if he does not hand over documents that may reveal the full scope of what is being covered up. This is not a collection of separate, unrelated incidents. This is a coordinated, systematic effort to use the power of the executive branch to shut down investigations and protect wrongdoers from being held accountable. And the courts are responding exactly the way the founders of this country intended them to respond, by asserting their constitutional authority and enforcing their orders against anyone who defies them, regardless of how powerful or well-connected that person may be. The deadline the judge imposed has created an extremely tight window for a decision that will carry enormous consequences. Patel has only days to make a choice: comply with the court order and release documents that could implicate both his political patron and himself, or defy the order and face immediate arrest and incarceration. This is the kind of moment that reveals who a person truly is. Does Patel respect the rule of law enough to follow a court order he strongly dislikes? Or does he believe that his loyalty to Trump and his own personal self-interest justify continued defiance, even if it costs him his freedom and ends his career? The clock is running, the marshals are waiting, and the judge has made it absolutely clear he will not hesitate to use the full power of his office to force compliance. The implications for Trump are direct and serious. Patel has been one of Trump's most fiercely loyal defenders, an ally deliberately placed at the top of the FBI because Trump believed he could count on Patel to shield him from investigation. If Patel ends up in jail for defying court orders, that protection disappears overnight. If Patel instead decides to comply with the court order rather than face being locked up, the documents he releases could expose Trump's efforts to obstruct justice and lay bare his connections to Epstein's criminal operation. Either outcome is damaging to Trump in a significant way. A jailed FBI director is a massive political disaster. A cooperating FBI director is a massive legal disaster. There is no version of this confrontation that ends well for the man who appointed Patel and has been relying on him for cover. The connection to the Epstein files adds a layer of public interest and moral weight that sets this confrontation apart from a typical legal dispute. Jeffrey Epstein's crimes were monstrous: the systematic sexual abuse of underage girls, made possible by powerful enablers and protected by wealth and influence. The public has been demanding answers for years. Who participated? Who helped make it possible? Who knew and looked the other way? The FBI's files on Epstein are widely believed to contain answers to those exact questions, including information about Trump's personal relationship with Epstein and what Trump knew about his criminal activities. Patel's sustained refusal to release those files has fed growing suspicion that they contain material damaging to Trump that Patel is actively working to suppress. The judge's order to produce the documents gives the public its best real opportunity to find out what the FBI actually knows about one of the most notorious criminal enterprises in modern American history and about the powerful people who were connected to it. The FBI as an institution is facing a legitimacy crisis, no matter how Patel ultimately responds to the court order. If he complies, he is effectively admitting that everything he did to resist was unjustified, that he was using the authority of his office not to advance justice, but to obstruct it. If he defies the order and gets taken to jail, the FBI is being led by a criminal defendant sitting in federal custody, a situation so absurd and untenable that it would almost certainly trigger immediate and overwhelming calls for his resignation or forcible removal. The agents and analysts who dedicate their careers to working for the FBI deserve leadership that respects the law and the Constitution. They cannot effectively do their jobs when the person running the bureau is in a personal battle to stay out of prison for contempt of court. The institution will survive this crisis because institutions are bigger than the individuals who temporarily occupy their top positions, but the damage to morale and to public trust will take years to repair, if it can be repaired at all. The judge's option to refer Patel for disbarment adds the destruction of his professional life on top of the prospect of incarceration. Patel is a licensed attorney. Attorneys are held to ethical standards that specifically include complying with court orders and respecting the judicial process. Defying a court order is grounds for professional discipline up to and including disbarment, which means the permanent, career-ending revocation of the right to practice law. If Patel is disbarred, he does not just lose his current job, he loses his entire professional future. He cannot work as a lawyer, he cannot represent clients, he cannot hold any position that requires a law license. The judge has the authority to make the referral that sets disbarment proceedings in motion, and a finding of contempt would serve as powerful, damning evidence in those proceedings. Patel is not just risking his freedom by continuing to defy this court. He is risking his entire professional identity and everything he has built throughout his legal career. The political landscape surrounding this confrontation is shifting quickly as lawmakers on both sides begin to process what the judge's warning actually means for the broader effort to hold this administration accountable. House Democrats who have been pushing for impeachment and removal proceedings see the FBI director facing the threat of jail time as direct confirmation that the administration has been systematically obstructing justice from the top down. They will argue that when the Attorney General is under investigation for hiding documents and the FBI director is being threatened with arrest for defying court orders, the problem is not just a few bad individuals making poor choices. It is a culture of lawlessness that Trump himself has built and encouraged throughout the entire executive branch. Senate Republicans who have shielded the administration through one scandal after another now face a significantly harder task. Because this time, the evidence of obstruction is not a matter of disputed witness testimony or how you choose to interpret a document. It is a federal judge finding in open court that the director of the FBI is in contempt. The timing of everything converging at once is both extraordinary and deeply consequential. The Epstein files are scheduled to be released imminently. The court's deadline for Patel's compliance is arriving at almost exactly the same time. The documents Patel has been fighting so hard to keep buried will either be produced voluntarily by him or released through other means. Either way, the information they contain is going to become public, and when it does, every person involved is going to have to answer for what those documents reveal. The coming together of all these events at the same moment creates a period of maximum exposure for Trump and his allies, a moment when multiple separate accountability processes are all reaching their breaking point simultaneously. The judge's warning to Patel is the judicial system's direct contribution to that moment, making sure the courts are fully engaged and keeping pace as the political and investigative processes push toward their conclusions. The sight of the FBI director visibly falling apart under judicial pressure raises serious and fundamental questions about how Trump picks and uses loyalists throughout the government. Patel was not chosen for his experience in law enforcement leadership, which was minimal at best. He was chosen for one reason above all others: his proven willingness to defend Trump against investigations and to go on the attack against anyone pursuing them. His confirmation was bitterly contested from the start, precisely because critics warned loudly that he would use the FBI as a shield to protect Trump rather than as a tool to pursue justice. Everything playing out right now validates every one of those warnings. Patel is facing jail time because he allegedly used the power of his office to protect Trump from scrutiny, withholding documents that the courts have ruled must be released. The very loyalty that got him the job in the first place is now the same loyalty that may send him to prison. The separation of powers is being tested in real time right before our eyes as the judicial branch asserts its authority over an executive branch official who appears to genuinely believe he operates above judicial supervision. But the Constitution does not give the FBI director a pass when it comes to complying with court orders. No law grants the director immunity from contempt proceedings. The principle that no one is above the law applies to law enforcement officials just as much as it applies to any ordinary citizen. Judge Berman's warning to Patel is a reaffirmation of that principle in the most direct and concrete terms possible. You are the FBI director, but you are not above the law. You have power and authority, but that power and authority does not include the right to defy court orders. You will comply or you will go to jail. The simplicity of that message is precisely what makes it so powerful and so important. The coming days will determine whether Patel chooses compliance or defiance, and that choice will determine everything that follows. If he complies, the documents are released and the public finally learns what the FBI's files contain about Epstein, about Trump, and about the connections between them. If he defies the order, he is arrested, and the FBI finds itself being led by someone sitting in federal detention. There is no third option. The judge made sure of that when he told Patel in no uncertain terms that no further delays would be permitted and no further excuses would be entertained. The deadline is approaching, the marshals are prepared, and the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is about to find out whether his loyalty to Donald Trump is genuinely worth going to jail for. The bottom line here is crystal clear. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, has been told directly by a federal judge that he will be arrested and locked up if he does not comply with a court order to produce Epstein-related documents and Trump investigation files before the deadline arrives. The judge looked Patel in the eye and told him that the time for evasion and delay was permanently over, that every legal objection had been carefully considered and thrown out, that any further defiance would result in immediate arrest by federal marshals, with no additional hearings and no additional warnings. Patel reportedly broke down emotionally under the weight of those words, understanding perhaps for the very first time that his title and his position would not shield him from the consequences of defying a federal court. The documents at the center of this fight could reveal what the FBI knows about Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein and whether Patel used his authority as director to actively suppress investigations that might damage the president who put him there. The contempt power the judge is prepared to exercise can result in immediate imprisonment to compel compliance, along with potential criminal charges and disbarment proceedings that would permanently end Patel's legal career. The broader pattern of obstruction running through the Trump administration, document hiding, investigation suppression, senior officials acting as if they are untouchable, is now being met with a judicial response that makes one thing absolutely clear. The courts still have the power and the will to enforce their orders against anyone who defies them, no matter who they are or what position they hold. The deadline is closing in fast. Patel must choose between releasing documents that could expose both his patron and himself, or going to jail to keep them buried. Either choice is devastating for Trump, and the walls are closing in from every direction.